What is going on, dudes and lady dudes? Welcome back to Just Nuts. Today, I'm taking a look at Witchcrafters. Now, Witchcrafters just got 2 new cards revealed as support in Eternity Code. We also have 1 more coming in Ignition Assault in 18 days. Barely. I could say 19 days. Almost 3 weeks. Whatever. Coming, and they really help the deck. Now, this is a deck that came out in Infinity Chasers? I believe it was Affinity Chasers with Affinitrack and Evil Eye. Yeah, that sounds about right. But it's a spellcaster-based archetype. Cute girls. A lot of people like the designs of these, but I really like the way it plays. It's a slower kind of control deck, but you really have a really strong grind game, and we'll get a little bit more into that. But it's a really cool deck, and I want to talk about how much the deck really changes, how much better it gets with the new support, and where it might stand afterwards. Because I think it does get a fair jump here, but we'll get into that. So, as far as what the deck does now, you have your spellcasters and you have your spells. That's really all it is. It's a very heavy spell-based deck. So here we've got 22 spells, and that's like on the lower end, possibly, depending on the kind of build you're playing. So looking here, you've got like your normal summons. They all have the same first effect, whereas a quick effect, they tribute themselves, and you have to discard a spell from hand to special any Witchcrafter monster from your deck. You're almost always going into your boss monsters being Hane as well as Madame Vare. They both give you disruption. Hane can quick effect discard a spell to target a face-up card on the field and destroy it. That's very nice, just a Dryden. And Madame Vare can discard a card to negate all face-up, is it cards? All face-up monsters your opponent currently controls. So you can blank an entire board's effects until the end of the turn, which is pretty nice. And it has battle phase shenanigans, even though it's only 1,000 attack, which is nice. And then Golem Maruru, if a spellcaster is targeted for an attack or a card effect, you can special from hand and bounce a card your opponent controls, or grab a Witchcrafter spell from grave and add it back to your hand, which is pretty nice. So your monsters are there. The monsters are solid. Even though these are technically neg 1s, you plus in other ways. So it sounds like a neg 1. And Ash is a bitch for this deck. It really is. That's why we're playing Called by the Grave here. We're playing Pot of Extravagance to help make up for any possible lost advantage through hand traps with Extravagance, because your extra deck matters so little. I mean, really, I'm only playing super poly targets. Like, that's it. Like Anaconda, in case we can go in and like use a hard super poly from the deck, but like that's all you're really using your extra deck for. I guess you could try and play Cherries or something or whatever. You have so much like open space for that. Instant Fusion is also another thing to consider. But yeah, your spells do interesting things as well. They do their first effect and then their second effect. Their second effect says if they have not activated their first effect that turn, on your end phase, you can add them back to your hand. As many as you did not activate that turn that are in your grave, as long as you control a Witchcrafter on the field. So Creation is your Rhoda, searches you any Witchcrafter monster. Holiday is Monster Reborn. Bystreak gives you Destruction Protection. And Scroll lets you draw a card if you kill a monster by battle. Draping bounces back row. Whatever. These 2 are like the worst ones, but you play them just because they're more names you can put in the grave, and every turn just kind of cycle them back to your hand. There. And they can come up in niche situations as well. But yeah, that's mainly it. So you're just trying to cycle these. You're trying to get a bunch of different names in circulation, and you're activating 1 or 2 a turn, and then you're adding 1 to 3 at your end phase back to your hand, because you have all these quick effects, so you can use these as discard fodder on your opponent's turn to disrupt them, to get advantage, to do all that stuff. So it's very cool, and they have just solid effects. I mean, Rhoda's good, Monster Reborn's good, Destruction Protection, that's like the first sign of all of our meta decks right now. I mean, right, like Strikers float on any kind of destruction of their monsters. Sallies have Bay Links. Orcus have Dingirsu. Like, all the best decks in the game have like Destruction Protection, so that's actually a nice sign. They are reasoning just a card to possibly drop an extra monster out of the deck. That's a possible extender in case you do like get ashed on one of them. Just drop another one out. Woo! Cool. That's one of the reasons I kind of want to swap Ghost Ogre for Impermanence, possibly. Just so it's not another monster that I can whiff on reasoning with, like mitigate how much I can whiff on this. And then you play Secret Village of the Spellcasters, 1 Mystic Mine, a Terraforming, Super Poly, and Metaverse. Metaverse gets you this or this, depending on the situation. If your opponent reveals like like a striker card, you just go straight for Secret Village, and the duel's probably over at that point. Unless they like opened a Cosmic Cyclone that for some reason they have in the main, and Mystic Mine. Just really good going second. This is a deck that can definitely struggle going second. In between Terraforming and Metaverse, you have a play to possibly just lock down your opponent's board going second. So, not too shabby. Yeah, and just some other spells. Like 1 Super Poly in the main, just because I didn't want to go all in on this. And with Verte Anaconda and the extract, you have other like ways to just kind of search this out of your deck if you just need the removal to go into a beater, because you can just like change something to dark, then send this, send two of your opponent's dark monsters and your Anaconda, and at least get out like a Trifia Veritum. You've got a solemn strike on the board as a 3,000 beater. So like that's pretty good. Yeah, and then just a bunch of super poly targets, because you'll probably end up siding the other two, and then just regular side deck stuff. But once we look at the new cards, let's look at these and how they change the deck. So we've got Witchcrafter Demonstration here. This card says special summon a Witchcrafter from your hand, and if you do for the rest of the turn, your opponent cannot activate cards and effects in response to your spellcaster monster's effect activations. That is actually so clean, because if you drop a monster out of your hand with this, that means your opponent can't ash you for the rest of the turn. Ash is the biggest pain in the ass for this deck. Just like I showed you, you tribute a monster and discard a card, and if you get ashed, you went -2 on that. They went -1 out of the hand, but you went -2. That's about as good as an Ash Blossom's ever gonna get. And this card just says like you can't do that, and it's just an extender. Get stuff out of the hand. They're specifically the big monsters. That's one of the biggest weaknesses of the deck, is that right now we have no way to get the big girls, Madame Vare, and Hain out of the hand. You probably need to play 2 Hain. Madame Vare comes up in other situations, so you probably just need the 1. So 2 and 1. That's essentially a 3 of a card you never want to draw. That's not good for consistency of a deck. And we don't have cards that like discard a bunch, at least generically. Like right now we only have Super Poly in this version that actually discards. So looking at that, I'd kind of just say like this card is actually so clean, because you have other ways to get it as well. Shimena can dump it. And guess what? If you dumped it, you didn't activate it that turn. So it's going to come back on the end phase. By the way, it comes back on end phase, so you would still be able to activate it in the end phase. No, actually you can't, because the hard ones return once per turn each. That was a lie. I just thought about that, and it doesn't work. Don't listen to me. Genie has an effect where she can banish herself and a spell engrave to activate the effect of the spell. So you could dump Genie, and then banish Genie to get the special from hand, which is actually pretty nice. Pator doesn't get you a search there. Pottery doesn't get you a search there, but you know what I mean. Like it's pretty decent, and you'd probably be playing it at 3 just cause. At worst case scenario, it's a card you can discard for cost, and you'll add it back every turn. That's worst case scenario, or you just use it as a protection from hand traps. Use it to get a monster out of the hand, and you know you're good to go as far as them being able to ash any of your Witchcrafter monster effects, which is very, very good. So this card's really, really solid. This one is particularly the good one, and it has the other effect. Obviously, the standard effect that all Witchcrafters have. If you haven't activated the first effect that turn, and it's in the grave, and you control a Witchcrafter, you can add it back to your hand. So very, very nice there. And then we also have Witchcrafter Patronus. This is a trap card, which is interesting, a continuous trap. So it stays up on the field. It says you can target one of your spellcaster monsters that is banished or in the grave, shuffle it in the deck, and if you do, add a Witchcrafter spell from deck to hand. So once per turn search, it's a quick effect. That's every single turn. So and it's even from banish too. So you can banish a Witchcrafter to get its effects. Banish Genie to copy the effects of a spell. Banish Shmena to Foolish Burial any card in the archetype. Banish Pator to draw a card and discard 1. And then just shuffle them back and get a draw, which is really, really nice. Or not draw, get a search. And then the other effect is during either player's turn, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from grave to target any banished Witchcrafter spells with different names and add them all to your hand. Now, Genie is really the only one that banishes a spell in the archetype. But what I've heard is like stuff like DD Crow is a fairly popular side deck card. There's other stuff that just banishes from grave, and they may see what your strategy does and go, how about I just cut off this rotation by start banishing stuff from grave? Okay, great. Patronus, add 3 that you banished back to hand, or something like that. You know what I mean? Like that. And Genie banishes itself, so you have ways to already set it up a little. Well, one way to set it up yourself. So it's still pretty solid. I think this is an interesting card. I'm not sure if this one's quite as helpful as Demonstration in the end as far as boosting this deck. The problem is this deck, a couple weaknesses. You have your boss monsters in the main deck. You have a very slow archetype. All your spells come back to your hand on the end phase, not in main phase 2, on the end phase. So that's like really, really tough there. So this deck doesn't help with the speed. The speed of the deck is something that's slow, that's like kind of lacking, and so this does not help with that at all, because it's a trap. You got to set it. Then it's very good resource wise. Like every turn essentially you're going to be getting like a search, as long as you're just keeping rotating like monsters into the grave and banish zone. Like you're searching forever. And I don't think this is searchable either, I believe, because I think all of your monster effects like stuff, well, I guess like Shmena can dump it. Shmena can dump it. If you already had one banished, you could just like add it to hand. That's like not the worst. It's not the best. And yeah, and like everything else deals with a spell. Like discard a spell, like banish this card with a spell. That card lets you draw, possibly draw into it. Yeah, so like it's all the stuff the archetype like deals with spells, not with traps. So this card doesn't really have synergy in that respect, so it's not searchable in any sense. So it's like a hard card you have to open going second. It's really not desirable because it's probably just going to be, I mean, obviously there are matchups that are also going to be slow, so this can work, but against any deck, any kind of meta deck that's a little more speedy and gets their stuff going pretty quick, this card doesn't really help so much against those. So yeah, I think really Demonstration is the key card here, really helping unlock the boss monster out of the hand as well as fight off the biggest problem for this, the singular biggest problem for this deck, which is Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. We already play Call of Rave. I'd still probably keep those because it's still just generically a great card in the meta right now. But then this card will also help. This might be a 3 of. I mean, it's at least a 2 of in my mind, but it might be a 3 of just because like you want to maximize your chances of drawing it if you're going to draw these girls. And it's just another card. It's just another like Witchcrafter spell that you can get in rotation and just start getting it back at the end phase if you didn't need to use it. So pretty cool. I think the deck has some very strong, as far as we listen to the weaknesses, it also has some strong points, you know. Very good grind game. It feels so brutal in a simplified game state against this deck because you're like your opponent's top decking. And if they're not getting insanely far with their top deck, your top deck is essentially like 2 to 4 cards. And it's not necessarily like that, but it kind of feels like that because you draw for turn, and even if you didn't do anything as the Witchcrafter player, on your end phase you added 1 to 3 cards back to your hand, and you're just like, okay, next turn I'll get you. As long as you're like not worried about dying that turn, you're like, okay, next turn I'll get you. Because I've got 4 cards in hand, I'm going to draw for turn, I'm going to go into my turn next turn with 5 cards in hand. Which can just feel brutal to just try and like to deal with that kind of overwhelming grind game, just getting so many cards back every turn. So that is a very strong aspect of it, as well as just your bare spellcaster archetypes. So you can abuse cards like Secret Village. Mystic Mine is pretty good in here, but any deck can really abuse Mystic Mine theoretically. Super Poly, you don't use the extra deck. That's very strong as well. So I think the deck's good, not good, but I think it'll be a little more rogue after this list. I'm not sure. Maybe we'll see it be capable of topping a regional. It's definitely not topping a YCS anytime soon. They'd need a little more support. But we've seen Konami does love these cute girl archetypes, so I definitely wouldn't be surprised if we see more support for Witchcrafters, in future sets as well. So that's pretty much where I'm at with Witchcrafters. I think they're cool. I think these cards really help them, and I can't wait to just test them out even more because they're more of a fun deck for me. But maybe try and get some tops at locals. Maybe be that guy who tries to get like a regional top with it. That'd be pretty lit. But yeah, that's pretty much from me, guys. Definitely let me know your thoughts below on Witchcrafters. Let me know what you think about them after this support, how much better they are, if you still think they're pretty bad, if you think they're better than I'm giving them credit for. Who knows? Let me know. I definitely plan on doing more videos like this in the future. Also, like just when archetypes get support, doing a video on the support and the deck. If I know more about the deck, might have to do some learning on some of them. Do some research to make sure I know what I'm talking about a little bit more, and just talking about where they are, what state they're in. I love doing discussion videos like these. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, subscribe to the channel if you have not yet, and I guess I'll see you in the next video.